So, who is Nancy Pelosi, and how in the hell is she worth almost $500 million on a public servant salary? And how are her stock portfolio outperforming the S&P 500? Her gains are well over 65%, especially in the last few years. Well, a lot of people are starting to take a lot of notice, and it's really starting to show, even to the point of creating the Pelosi Act, which I think is hilarious acronym for this policy. It's so funny because it's so blatant and in our faces, but she's absolutely getting away with it. So she's just laughing to the bank. But a lot of more people are starting to take notice. Have a listen here to Joe Rogan talking about it. He's 100% right.
Got your situations where you've got like your Nancy Pelosi's where they're clearly using the system for extreme wealth. They're generating preposterous amounts of wealth for a reasonable income. You know, they may have a reasonable income of $170,000, $200,000 a year, but yet they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, that's kind of crazy, right? That's kind of crazy that you're supposed to be that's above board. That's level. That's okay. That's nuts. But,
or I mean, I just saw the story about this congressman right before the big beautiful bill passed, and he like sold all his stock in a company that does Medicaid reimbursements.
Oh, Jesus.
So like, you know,
because you knew it was coming.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
crazy.
Yes.
Insider trading. And by the way, insider trading, everyone wants to use Nancy Pelosi as an example. She kind of gets used as an example just because she's been so good at it. But if you look at the actual insider trading, it's red and blue. It's the whole thing.
Yep.
It's filled with people that are benefiting.
Which he's 100% right. They're benefiting on both sides. I think Trump was against. They've actually changed the bill from when they started in 2012. They had this Stock Act, and it didn't include vice president, and it didn't include spouses. So that's how Nancy Pelosi was getting away with it. As she says, it's only her husband that has been dealing with it. So who is Nancy Pelosi? I really wanted to do a deep dive into this and figure out how did she get to where she is from, you know, she grew up in Baltimore. She was born in 1940. Her dad was the mayor, and he was also a congressman. And then she ended up meeting her husband, Paul Pelosi, in I think it was 63. She met her husband, and he has a company called the Financial Leasing business. So he's in the real estate business, actually. And so she blames a lot of her stock trading, not blames him, gives him credit. So like I said, back in that Stock Act of 2012, the spouses were allowed to trade. And there was no issue, but she obviously knew a lot was going on. So have a listen to what she had to say about her stock trading. She really does wipe her hands like, oh, it's my husband.
Well, let me just read what he said. I'm sorry that we had some sort of technical issue. Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid. That's what I agreed to come to talk about.
Yeah, but I wanted
what that means in the election.
I wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous. In fact, I very much support the trading of members of Congress. Not that I think anybody's doing anything wrong. If they are prosecuted and they go to jail. But because of the confidence it instills in the American people, don't worry about this. But I have no concern about the obvious investments that had been made over time. I'm not into it. My husband is, but it isn't anything to do with anything insider. But the president has his own exposure, so he's always projecting. He's always projecting. And let's not give him any more time on that, please. We're going forward here, and I'm very proud of my family. And while he might make fun of us, while somebody inspired by him breaks into our home and hits my husband in a deadly fashion, hits my husband over the head, and he thinks that's a riot, I'd rather not go into some of my other complaints about him right now, rather to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid.
So there you have Nancy Pelosi kind of wiping her hands a bit. It was my husband. It was him that does the trading. It's all on him. And talking about projection, one person projecting on the other is like, they're just the constant projection, but they're also gaslighting the public, because we all know what's going on. It's just not even feasible to get the returns that she's getting. It's just unbelievable. So again, how did this all start? Well, she moved to California. I think it was back in 1967. And they moved to San Francisco. And that's when she started to get into politics. So her first run for politics was in 1987. And she took the 8th congressional seat there in California because the person that held it before had passed away. So she kind of fell into that role. And that's how she started in politics. And then she just went on from there. And then she became Speaker of the House back in 2007. And she was the first ever woman for Speaker of the House, which was an incredible feat at that time. And even to this day, what a great position. So she's obviously had a strong voice and is a very aware person of everything that's going on around her. So again, so this is the new Pelosi Act, and listen to what the White House has to say about the Pelosi Act. I think it's hilarious. To put a ban
on stock trading for members of Congress is even a thing is because of Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she is rightfully criticized because she makes, I think, $174,000 a year, yet she has a net worth of approximately $413 million. In 2024, Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio, this was a fascinating statistic to me, grew 70% in 1 year in 2024, and her portfolio outperformed every single large hedge fund in that same year, and even more than doubled the returns of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. So I think the president stands with the American people on this. He doesn't want to see people like Nancy Pelosi enriching themselves off of public service and ripping off their constituents in the process. As for the mechanics of the legislation and how it will move forward, the White House continues to be in discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill.
So that's what the White House has to say about this. And like I said, this goes very deep. And I used to work in the stock market. I was in investment banking years and years ago. And it's pretty hard to get those returns on investments. It really, truly is. And a lot of people started, and I was actually put money into this, but use her stock trading, because now a lot of the social media have been tracking what the congressmen what they've been investing in, because it all had to be public knowledge. So there's a lot of companies out there, and there's one that's called this guy here.
For 2.5, 3 years on Pelosi.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she's gotten a lot of scrutiny because of what you've done. Has her office ever reached out to you in any way?
No, the office has never reached out. And again, the crazy thing about this stuff is we took this whole thing a step further by building our app, Autopilot. And Autopilot, the way that it works is you literally can go and invest alongside these politicians. So it's one thing to be like, oh, fuck you, Pelosi, you're trading in front of us. And then it's like, oh, wait a second, you're crushing it. Like, whoa. And now it's like, now I can invest alongside them so I can get in on the action. And I think allowing people to get their money in makes the whole thing kind of just more hypocritical and funnier.
Yeah, it's pretty funny and very hypocritical. I was actually going to put some money into that just to see how it goes, because I heard somebody else put $5,000 in, and they've been making a shit ton of money on it. So definitely look into that. Yeah. And what it does is you can automatically trade. So you don't even have to think about it. As soon as they make a trade, then you make a trade. So I also wanted to do a deep dive into what are the big indicators that there might be insider trading on Pelosi's stocks. This guy here, he's the one that Josh Hawley, he's the one that's kind of brought it to the House, and he's the one that originally brought it back in 2012, and he reapproached this year. But one of the things that Nancy Pelosi wanted added was that VPs and the president have to be added to this as well. So essentially what the act is saying is that you or your spouse, vice president, president, any congressman, any spouses cannot do any trading, and they have to keep it in a blind trust, which means someone else does the trading for you and you guys can't touch it. So that's what they're looking to do here. And again, this is the Stock Act that started in 2012, and they're just trying to take it a step further. But the Stock Act is actually where the loophole is, where Pelosi's getting away with it, because the Stock Act only is for the congressman. It's not for the spouses. And so that's why when she's on CNN saying, oh, it's Paul, I got nothing to do with it. It's all her husband. So again, like I said, I literally was looking into a lot of the stock trades that she made, and I just took out the top 3 that kind of surfaced to me as being very blatant, if anything else. So you can have a look here. And there's Paul Pelosi as well. So the first one is NVIDIA, NVDIA, I believe is the ticker on that. And this stock here that they shorted, they did call options on this one. And they did 1 to 2, I think they did $1 to $5 million in call options on that one. It's here. Yeah. So this was back in June 2022. Paul Pelosi bought $1 million and $5 million in call options. So that essentially means that he bought the option to buy. So when you buy a call option, you're making the assumption that the stock is going way up. And you're also kind of just putting in a bid. So let's just say the stock was $100 and you do a call option for 105. So there's a strike price. So essentially you're going to pay, say the strike price is like $110. So you pay $5 and you can buy all the shares that you want, but you buy the right to either purchase that share as it goes up in price at a certain time period. Usually it's like 2-3 months, whatever the period is. So there's a strike price and there's a time period. So you're betting that the stock is going to go up. So say if he bought the options for like, let's just say $3 and the strike price is $105. So he pays the $300 for the right to buy the stock when it hits 105. So his profit would be the $2. But what happens is when people really know, and you see the stock prices here, when you put the call option in and the stock takes off, so it goes from $100 to $150, or let's say $125. So you make all that profit with not having to put the money in. Like you're leveraging yourself and you're betting on the stock going up. So that's essentially what he did here. So he put in $1 million and $5 million call options on this stock. And where I put the arrow is exactly where he made those call options, the exact time. And you can see where the stock just took off from there. And like, it's almost like when you're doing the call options, like he leveraged himself so much. To leverage yourself that much, you have to know that the stock's going up, because if the stock ends up going down, you end up losing your money. So let's just say you put you would lose the $3 times, however, you would lose that money if the stock drops out. So you're essentially betting on the win. And then Visa here, he ended up selling the Visa, and he ended up I don't think he as much. Well, he obviously made his money on the way up. So they bought low, sold high before it dropped. So he ended up saving about $25,000 to $50,000. If he would have held onto it, he would have. And they ended up. Visa went into a lawsuit about monopolizing the debit cards or something like that. So they ended up being in a lawsuit. So he was advance of that and ended up selling his shares before it dropped. So Visa was another one. And this one is Google. So in Google, again, he did the same thing. Let me see what my notes on Google. So yeah. So Nancy is on the House Judiciary Committee. And so she oversaw everything with this and the antitrust. And of course, there's no proof to this. But he bought $1 million in like Alphabet. Alphabet is part of Google. It's underneath Google. So he bought $1 million plus in call options. And then months later, amid controversy, it has major penalties and it just surges. So a lot of it was essentially betting against AI. So he was up over 50% there. So you can see the stock, he literally more than doubled his money there. And it was all, again, she had inside information, but it was all that they were expecting more restraints on AI that didn't come through. So they dodged all kinds of penalties and all that kind of stuff. So he ended up it just skyrocketed. So he made over 50% in there. So that's another perfect example of where he makes his money. But again, it's just very sad that it's really come to this, that these congressmen are totally making money on it. And the thing with Nancy Pelosi, I find, is very annoying. Is she is acting like, and the rest of the Democrats, like, oh, we don't do anything wrong. We don't do anything wrong. And to say that Trump is projecting, meanwhile, she's projecting, which is, it's very irritating, is it's so blatant and it's so in our face, and they're just so getting away with it. Again, how can someone who makes $193,000 a year end up with almost $500 million in wealth? It's just, questions are. But the thing is, even if they make all the changes now, that's why she doesn't care. She's got the money in the bank. She really doesn't care. It's irrelevant to her now. So yeah, slap all those constraints on all the congressmen and create these blind trusts, because it doesn't matter to her anymore. She's done. She's out. She's good. So anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts. Is Nancy Pelosi guilty of insider trading? And what I think what I've seen, and like I said, I just picked out the top 3 stocks, but if you really, really did a deep dive into the exact timing and what the exact information or knowledge that she would have could have been shared with her husband, I think it goes a lot worse than whatever Martha Stewart did. And I don't know if Martha Stewart just went to jail to be the poster child of, like, hey, the rich insider trading. But what I see here is that she's doing a hell of a lot worse than Martha Stewart ever did. So anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts. Is Nancy Pelosi guilty of insider trading? And do you think there'll be any kind of repercussions, any kind of anything, any kind of just justice coming forward? And do you think this bill is going to be passed? It looks like it's going to get passed, so that's hopeful. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts. Please like, subscribe, share, and I'll talk to you guys soon.